Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Elseworlds Exchange. I'm Sal, and I'm joined today by Scott Snyder. Scott, thanks for being on the show today.
It's great to see you, Sal. I'm glad to be able to do this again, dude.
Same here, man. Thank you so much for reaching out and making this happen. I'm very excited. Normally, we drop back issues today, but I'm really excited because this is kind of like a fun experiment. Number one, we get to plug some cool shit from Scott Snyder. Number two, we get to catch up. I think it's been like a quick minute since the last time you and I have actually talked.
We usually go with Benny and do the whole kind of it's like
the blitz, yeah.
Like blitz. So it's good to actually get to talk to you one-on-one and
same here, man.
And all of it. So
yeah. So we got that going, and also want to see if you're catching the show live right now, by the way, welcome to the show. Right after the show, we're gonna drop back issues, so it's gonna be a non-stop stream of content for you folks out there right now. Like, you just be prepared. It's gonna be like Saturday mornings. Grab your cereal, hang out with me and Scott, and then keep going.
Procrastinate. It's only Wednesday.
It's only Wednesday. You're probably not at work or school.
We can catch up later. Skip school. Go behind.
Exactly. Yeah, this is one of those days where I'm like, you know what? If you're skip it, yeah, you're fine.
Yes.
Play hooky.
Right. We all deserve it.
Exactly. Like. Yeah. After the gap year, which I'm calling 2020 from now on.
Oh my God, dude. I can't even. The baby, I took him to the playground yesterday for the first time in a long time. And
yeah.
And it just opened and there was barely anybody there. But and I'm masked up, I'm vaccinated, the whole thing. But we get there and he's looking at these other kids and it's like, what are these strange species? And they're like all his age, you know what I mean? Totally no recognition where he's like, no dat, dada. No dat, and I'm like, that's one of you. It's one of your kind. No dat, dada. And I was like, all right, here we go. This is the super antisocial, afraid of his own shadow. Great, let's get into comics. Maybe
exactly, like, yeah. Well, then you're gonna love Batman. Here you go, kiddo. That's awesome.
Right?
I mean,
exactly.
I'm so glad he's out there, and I'm so glad he's able to be integrated, because I can't even imagine what this thing has been like for children, especially children who have kids age 11 and up. They're just miserable. They're just playing video games and just being miserable. But under that, it's all about physical interaction.
I got the whole spectrum, man. I got the angry 14-year-old.
That's right.
He's our oldest. We had him when we were pretty young. He's all about can't see his friends, wants to play more video games because it's the only social interaction and that stuff. But he's great. He's a good kid. And then our middle kid, who's 9, is the whole he's in school. His school is half the time there, and
right.
His whole thing is more missing out on not so much the social stuff, but seeing his grandparents and that kind of thing, the whole kind of more birthday party stuff, all that. And then the Quinn, who's only 1, he's going to be 2 next month. He's just his whole life's been in the pandemic, so it's so cool. He's never not been quarantined in his his whole existence. So he's just like a moon man walking. The closest we came is funny because the mall here was open for walking before it opens the stores, and nobody.
Cool.
No old people. There used to be a lot of old people. That's when we had our 14-year-old. He was born in February, and so I would take him into Bjorn and walk there at 6 in the morning, and it was like a space station, just empty.
Yeah.
And we were being friends with all the elderly people there, and they got him a little onesie that was like mall rat. It was but with Quinn, I take him there, and he just runs up and down this empty thing. There's nobody there, no elderly people, anything, and it's just
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so weird, man. It's just an otherworldly sci-fi future kind of strange, haunting weirdness. I have no idea who this generation, what they're going to be like.
Nope. Yeah, usually there are telltale signs about what you can kind of telegraph, if you're built on commercialism, kids like us watching Saturday morning. I was literally just recounting to a friend of mine yesterday about how in today's world you can kind of tailor make a childhood for your kids. You can kind of create this whole experience, but for us it's commercials were a bit I have some familiarity and fondness for some McDonald's commercials more than some family members, and it's just you could probably imagine what a generation of kids grown up on an onslaught of commercialism would become, but this generation, I got no rudder. It's just
I know, right?
The open road, man.
And even the 9-year-old was like, so this is like everything could really fall apart kind of stuff.
Oh no!
And you're like, yes, the like the veil has dropped, and like he's like, well, I could just do I need to go to college? I'm like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You know, well, I think, you know, the machinery, it's like going into, it made me think of like, I took the kids to Disney World right before the pandemic, and when we were going through, we went on the People Mover, and it took us behind Space Mountain, and they were cleaning it, and all the lights were on when we went through and whatever, and they were like horrified. This is what Space Mountain looked like, how, you know, and it was scary. It wasn't like it was too small. It was just like, that's all it is this. It's like how you know, nerve-wracking the turns look and how narrow it is. My hand could get cut off, but not that it could, but you know what I mean? Like, the whole thing, and like that feels like life with them now, where it's like, you know, they've seen the lights on in terms of how spooky everything can get, how quickly. So my hope is that what it really has done for a lot of them is, you know, kind of recalibrate their priorities in a good way, where we've spent so much more time with them, you know, than we would otherwise. And yeah, they see how much it matters to have friends you're close with, and family, and, you know, how what really matters in life is you know, is there in these rough times. So that's my hope, you know, or they'll just be complete monsters, and we'll see.
Right. Well, I'm excited to find out. It's going to be a brave new world out there.
Exactly.
Speaking of new worlds, you have been hard at work inventing whole new realities, worlds, comics, and of course, when the last time we talked, you had launched, or at the very least, you were really excited about Best Jacket Press and all the titles that are coming out of there. Today, if you're watching this today, when you go to your comic book store, you can pick up Nocterra #2, because the first issue is come and gone, second issue is here. Let's hype up Nocterra. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Well, it's super fun. I mean, I think I mentioned this to you last time, but you know, this is like my year away from DC, where I'm still like employed by them, and I'm going back to do a big project at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm gone. But I just needed. I told them I want 1 year to do kind of set up my own stuff, and all these books that I've been working on secretly or privately for the better part of 3 years. You know, so a good, like I told you, like 9-10 books at different stages of development. Like really get them to a place where they can come out consistently over the next 2 years. So we're gonna do kind of a bigger expo in a few months, where you get a sense of like, you know, all the books that are being teased online. I'm trying to be really good and quiet and not announce or point to anything, but it's not hard to tell who I'm working with on some of the books, at least when they're posting and, you know, and tagging Creator Owned Comics and that. And I hope people are getting excited about it, but we'll really kind of pull the curtain back later. But with Nocterra, the fun was, it was the first one. It was the first one out of the gate. And so what I wanted to do with it was bring a lot of the kind of bombast and muscular kind of storytelling that I love doing with metal, death metal, Batman, to my creator own work, where I used to kind of have like that, you know, flex those muscles in superhero world, where the stories were personal always, but they were also widescreen and epic. And with creator own, it was a place to kind of push myself in darker directions. And with this, it's like everything in one place. It's like all of the kind of high octane and adrenaline of like your Batman or your metal, mixed with the darker sensibilities of witches or American Vampire. And it's literally about a darkness that envelops the earth like tomorrow, and no one knows why. And it changes every living thing on the planet that stays in it for more than about 10 hours without a light into a monster called a shade. And what we start to learn in issue 2 and issue 3, and the whole story kind of takes place 13 years after this has happened, and focuses on this woman, Val Sundog. That's her call sign as a trucker, Riggs. And she's a ferryman in this world, which is someone who drives people from outpost to outpost, goods from outpost to outpost. And she and her brother. And so by issue 2 now, you're starting to see that she's being chased by this mercenary. She's picked up this mysterious kind of old guy and his granddaughter who claim to be going to a sanctuary, which are these rumored places that still have solar simulators and lamps, and they're supposed to be like these rich bunkers, but nobody believes they exist because no one's ever seen them.
Right.
And this older guy Gus and his granddaughter Bailey, who hire her to drive them into this dangerous territory for a lot of money, to get them to the sanctuary. They're being chased. You learn in issue 1 and now in issue 2, it really ramps up, by this guy called Blacktop Bill, who's a mercenary, and he's bonded to this like carbon stuff. So he's completely black, like a silhouette, which is just knowing. And you learn more about him. You start to learn like who he was. By issue 3, you start to learn who he was in the pre-Big PM. They call it the Big PM, the darkness. And every year is one more click on the Big PM. So 1 year in is 1 PM, 2 years in, we're in 13 PM now. So the series, again, is just like balls to the wall fun. It's literally like, I was talking to James Tynan, and he's like, so basically it's like truckers versus monsters for serial killers. And I was like, yes, that is kind of what it is. And it's like with Cthulhu monsters coming, I'm like, yes, that is a good description. But I was like, but it's got heart,
Right. Well, like, and that's the thing we've been talking about, like in Hollywood terms, that nobody ever explains to you a premise without likening it to another premise. And in this particular case, it's a James Cameron movie. Like, Nocterra is a James Cameron movie.
Cameron, Steven Spielberg,
because it's got the heart. It's got like it's not just like, oh, let's see how messed up the world is and watch everybody die kind of situation. It's about character. It's got the fantastic, but it also has like this kind of uniqueness about it. That
I mean, the fun. Thanks, man. The fun with this is like you were saying Saturday morning cartoons earlier. Like, that's what I want with this book. Is a lot of the books I'm working on, I'm trying to kind of upend your expectations about me as a writer and the teams that I'm working with. Some of them lean in, like clearly, like I'm working on something with Greg, that kind of a book. Capullo, like that kind of a book, we want to embrace a lot of the stuff you expect from us and just do it even bigger. This is that kind of book where, as the first book out of Best Jacket, I didn't want to do something that would be like, well, that's not what I expect from him, but I'm really excited by the risks being taken. All that stuff is coming. I mean, and they're really the majority of things I'm working on for Best Jacket are designed that way. Like there's a speculative, like a sci-fi noir book. And they're all with people either I've worked with and I'm close with, or brand new people who I really trust to push me in new directions. And I really like as people. Yeah. But the books are, there's a historical fiction one about a barnstormer where there's like no monsters, no gore. There's gore, but there's no monsters and no supernatural horror or anything. So with this, I wanted it, instead of kind of subverting or dodging expectations, to surprise you, to actually like lean into that G.I. Joe movie, Transformers movie, like shit we loved when we were kids that came out that made your head explode, where you're like, yes, and why? Because it was just what you wanted, but it was like better than you expected. And like that's what this book is like, it's got literally like, Blacktop Bill is a serial killer bonded to nano things. So he's like a black silhouette, so the shades ignore him, and he's got awesome souped up killing machine trucks and cars behind him to come find you. And it's like, and the human shades, by the way, you learn in issue 3, for some reason, our biology changes vastly more than any other species on the planet of anything. Okay. So it's almost like the darkness has a plan for us, and we turn 15 feet tall. You'll see them in issue 5. Tony just drew them. They're awesome. Sweet. And they can communicate to each other in ways that we don't understand yet. So there's a language they speak to each other with these black balloons. So the whole world, I just pitched to Image like our whole structure, and it has 25 to 30 issues minimum, like planned. So to get to the end of the whole thing. So it really excels. There's this whole mystery about the different terras, like the different kinds of light from different dimensions. So there's a whole mythology you start to learn about in issue 2 today. You get your first real kind of revelations about that. And it's built on science. And then the fun for me is always like trying to disguise or paper over like where that minecart has like jumped the rails and suddenly gone into crazy town. Yep. So, it's like you'll read it and be like, oh, this makes sense. And then where did it stop making sense? Because it clearly doesn't anymore. But that's my job. So it has all of this research and, exuberance and fun and just violence and all of it. I just love this book. So I'm very proud of it, very proud of the team. And to give you a sense of like how much, I mean, we enjoy working together. Like, you know, Tony and I are friends a bunch of years. You know, he was one of the first people to really be kind and welcoming to me as a creator when I started on Detective. He was the Batman guy at that time. And Morrison was on Batman Inc. So the fun was like, we were the guys here, and he was, you know, doing Batman. It was awesome. I was just nobody on Detective. Grant was like up here doing all of this huge idea, huge world building stuff.
Yeah.
So Tony really took me under his wing in a number of ways and was very kind to me about like how to manage the pressure and the stress. And, you know, don't worry, Grant's up here. So, you know, just do your thing. Like people, you know, are paying attention over there. So we've always tried to get together and work on something. And it was about 3 years ago or so, almost now, I brought this up to him, and we met at San Diego. And then my wife, her sister lives outside Chicago, not far from Chicago. And so when we flew out to visit them a couple times before the pandemic, Tony and I got together and built this whole thing. And Tomeo Morey, who's like, you know, superstar colorist, I called Tynan from Batman and was like, guess who we stole for, but, you know, he's still doing Batman. And the funny thing is, like, James is like, your book's all black. Like, why does it all darkness? Like, why do you even need it? I need him. Don't say that. Anyway, so he's good friends with Tony, 10 years, and Tony's wife. And, you know, we have kids the same age. We're very, we really love working together. Even Darren, the letterer, is somebody who I became close with or really learned to admire back when we were doing Batman. And he came in, did a couple special issues with me that really required some pretty acrobatic lettering that were very much about text and articles and all this news stuff that was part of the story. So, and Will Dennis is, you know, he's under Karen Berger, was part of the team that he greenlit American Vampire with Mark Doyle under him.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is like, we all go back. You know what I mean? We're all like deep partners on this one. So we just enjoy. There's not going to be no implosion. It's not like there's going to be no, like, you know, I hate you,
egos.
No. Busting up. Yeah. No. Whatever. We're all cool.
Exactly. So what you're saying, I think, if we're going to continue the truck metaphors, you're in it for the long haul.
We are. Yeah. Well, Tony, I sent him yesterday this whole projection. You know, like I told you, I sent Image this whole story thing, and Tony obviously already has that. But
yeah,
I sent him this projection of like how we can even financially like make this work over the next 3-4 years as a book that we keep going as the primary thing that he's on. It's, you know, that Tomeo obviously as a colorist can do multiple things, but and be like, here's what you know, here's what we can do if we get past trade 1, trade 2.
Right.
Here's where we can do interstitial issues, you know, so you have a break or a vacation. But we're really in it. It is not, you know, unless something cataclysmic happens, like where, you know, there's a huge disruption in a way that with the whole market or the whole, you know, distribution or whatever. I mean, no reason why we won't keep going with this one and keep having fun with it. And the Kickstarter really allowed us to have enough in the bank to make the first 7-8 issues without any worry about needing to rely on royalties or any of that stuff. And like the royalties support us. So
was that that was your first Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, it was. It was my first. I don't know if it will be my last. I loved doing it. It was so much fun learning about all these incredible projects there, but doing it in a pandemic was a lot. There's still books going out in England because the shipping in UK has just been a nightmare with all of the closed ports. So we're on a line to like get the books off of thing. And our guy at OSN shipping calls it like twice a day just to be like, are we this today or whatever? So there was a lot of micromanaging, I think, that made me feel like I would do this again, but I would wait until the world settles a bit, you know.
Yeah.
But we're very proud of it and happy that it came out as well as it did, and very grateful to everybody. So,
yeah, it's an exciting project. I think this I've always been an admirer of Tony Daniel's work, and I got to tell you, I think this is some of the best of his career, which is
he'll tell you that, man.
Pretty dope.
He came out swinging. Like I don't think it's any there's anything off with saying that it's like unequivocally his best work. And what's coming is better and better. I mean, he'll tell you that himself, you know. And I think one of the things that has been so fun about it is that we're both learning new things. Like that's the kind of relationship that I love with an artist, where, you know, like if you look at Batman #1 and how Greg drew Bruce, it was awesome, but it was so different than the way he draws by the end. I mean, you know, still recognizably Greg, but you it's like you just see an evolution of like learning new things, learning new techniques, trying new things, like, you know, all that. And I learned that alongside him in terms of how do I write for this person, try new things so that I'm pushing myself. And Tony's that way too. So for example, he learned all of this stuff about digital inking from actually through with Clayton Henry, who did our variant for #2 out today, so that he can try new techniques along the way and like grow as an artist. And I think wait till you see in issue 3, he does some stuff traditionally, some stuff digitally, and it's so cool, like the look. And I think it's like just his best work, you know. I like hands down. So really cool.
We've when you mentioned Blacktop Bill, it occurred to me how many of your characters have like these kind of like really fun, whimsical names. And I'm wondering, as a writer, you know, it's fun to create a character, and especially when that character comes alive, the high you get when that happens is like it's infectious. But like, how quickly do you come up with your names, and how much fun do you have doing that? Because you're like, okay, I got to come up with a sweet ass name for this character. He does like he's.
It's one of the best parts is like having them come to life because of what they're called. So Skinner Sweet, it's one of my favorites. You know, Blacktop Bill, the Batman Who Laughs was James and I come up with together, and we were like, it's just strange moniker, but it just fits him. You know, all of it. So no, I love him, and one of the things that's so fun is like, I know there's like this kind of common wisdom that villains should be sympathetic and have some degree of kind of relatability. And I do love making some villains like that. You know, I do. I think a lot of the characters we made up in American Vampire have that kind of gray area, Skinner in particular, but a bunch. But I think if the last year plus has taught us anything too, it's that like people can be real evil, you know, and there's like there's sociopaths out there, and I am fascinated with true evil, like I've always been, and as something to almost study. And I've always kind of like played around with the idea of people who find themselves evolved or find themselves a higher form of kind of humanity because they don't have this vestigial thing that's a compass of, you know, ethical
morality or
morality. Why? And I made the argument like back in Black Mirror, and it's like haunted all the stuff that I've done in different ways and explored in different ways. But, you know, the dealer back then says, he's like, you know, you find goodness in the animal kingdom all the time. You know, other species from the great apes down display kindness at times for whatever reason.
Yeah.
What they don't display is sadism. You know, they don't display evil. So isn't that what makes us divine or special or godly? Is our, you know, our propensity for evil as opposed to good.
Right.
And so I love creating characters that also have new levels of like depravity in terms of their view of humanity and what they're willing to do to get what they want. And Blacktop Bill is like pure that and openly that. And he's just a walking black hole, literally and figuratively, in the book, where I love writing him. In issue 3, which I just wrote, they'll polish the lettering too. You know, issue wise, I'm through 6, but in terms of the lettering just went out the door for 3.
Sweet.
And there's a scene where he's talking to somebody, and he's like, he's harpooned them, and they've been harpooned on the top of his car, so they're like stuck there. And I'll give it. It's the old man. And he's like, the old man is like, please, you know, just don't do anything to my granddaughter. Don't chase her. You know, just I have whatever you want here. I'll give. And he's like, no. He's like, I heard that you were on the committee that helped vote whether or not it would be me to undergo this process, and you voted against me because you thought I might enjoy this job a little bit too much. You know, meaning like be this mercenary, this terrible killer on the roads. And he's like, he's like, I'm not and the old man is like, I'm so sorry, I please, like, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Just don't go after, don't, kill me, but don't kill my granddaughter. And Blacktop Bill is like, I'm not going to kill either of you. Like, I'm going to leave you harpooned to the top of my car, watch you turn into a shade, and then I'm going to make popcorn while you kill her and kill everybody else. And then he's like, no, don't do this, whatever. And he leaves him there, and he's like, here's to always enjoying your job a little bit too fucking much. Like, I love this guy. He's so evil, Yeah. I don't think I feel bad because I'm like, reveling in like in cruelty, but
sure,
I am a big believer that that many villains out there are not sympathetic at all and deserve, to be sort of explored as such,
right.
like sociopathy and real darkness exists. And that doesn't mean that there's not something neurologically wrong that can be studied or corrected, all of it. But I don't think there's anything wrong, especially in fiction, with creating, characters that are that black of heart.
Right.
I like it. So, but Batman Who Laughs, him, James Jr., those characters, always allow me to, I think, really, I don't know, look through a darker prism at human nature. So I like him a lot. He's a whole bunch of fun.
That must come from the fear of the dark. That kind of like I know that whenever you talk about fear, people talk about existential dread. They talk about the fear of monsters hiding in the closet versus like, oh, I've never been afraid of monsters under the bed because they're not real. What I'm afraid of is like being mugged or experiencing. And but there is that like that element of whatever, anything can be behind the door, anything can be in the basement, anything can be in the woods, and that kind of like. Yeah, and that kind of fear is like that fear creates the shades that we fear the most, and I like that idea of that kind of informs this kind of horror. That the best horror is the one we dream up, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it doesn't mean like the monster has to be sympathetic. It has to be a reflection of our fears about ourselves, a reflection of our fears about the world, of our future, whatever it is that keeps you up at night. The monster, in my mind, should be an extension of that thing in that way, whether or not that monster is, purely evil or a weirdly relatable, scary, predatory version of your own fantasies and fears. But the dark, for me, like the whole thing, I told you, I think, I had a pretty acute fear of it as a kid.
Yeah.
And I think it feeds anxiety. I've always dealt with anxiety and depression in different levels. And I see it now in my 9-year-old, not my 14-year-old, but my 9-year-old really struggles at night. He still like wakes up a bunch and he'll have these irrational fears. And in the dark, it's very hard to calm yourself or him or anything down because so much seems possible, And by morning, it's kind of like, oh, I can deal with that. But at night, it just exacerbates, I think, the sense that anything you're worried about may not only be possible, but coming for you in a way. It's just biological, So the story is written on two levels, from two personal levels. Like one is when it was conceived, which was, it's very much about like what we're saying, where it's about a darkness that is worse than your worst fear, where it's like, let's make a story where all your fears about the dark are true, but magnified, where it changes everything out there into something terrifying. Trees, birds, plants, everything. So the dark is just as scary as you always thought. Let's explore that and get through it together. But then as the pandemic hit and came through, it really made it even more acutely urgent and resonant to us as a story, where you realize you're writing about a darkness that separates everyone and changes them into things that are unrecognizable to each other because of how they've kind of drifted apart into their own silos. And so it took on this other urgency. And I think it's a story that we really love as parents, me and Tony, and also feel a deep connection to. I think right now you can see it as a way of writing your anger and fear and hope about all kinds of things, from the ways in which we're siloing from each other in terms of issues, the ways in which we silo from each other culturally, the ways in which we do it on a basic human level because of, the pandemic and all of it, politically, everything. And so there's nothing that happens during the day that I can't kind of like funnel into this book as a way of being like, man, pissed off about this, or man, I'm worried about this, or man, and then it's translated into kind of, or it goes into the DNA or the weird primordial soup of the book and becomes a monster that you're fighting in some capacity or other. So yeah, it's a book that we really I feel very grateful to be able to do right now for all those reasons too.
Yeah, it's exciting, and it's great that there's, it's always fun to pick up a book that is like a comfort food, or it's like something kind of exciting because it's just like a popcorn spectacle or whatever. But there's always that extra element where, like I said, like it's you when you compare it to a Spielberg or a Cameron kind of flick, it's like there is an artist there who's trying to tell a story and is trying to say something about people, as opposed to, and also knows that like machine guns are cool. And it's like, that's always the fun blend. It's like,
that's my favorite shit, man, is everything from Indiana Jones to like Avengers Endgame they're smart, fun, total full-hearted embraces of like everything you love as kids, but made also mature and interesting and layered, but never shying away from the fun of it all.
Yeah.
So that's what this is to me. It's, again, we're trying some different things that may or may not be for everybody, but I'm really excited about. But this one is like, summer blockbuster, kind of like all of the joy of that stuff. Here you go.
Yeah. I feel like, because you've broken into a lot of different genres or touched upon them through the genre of like either superhero comics or your independent work. Mm-hmm. Are there any romance stories that you got?
Yeah, well, the historical fiction one is kind of romancy. It's like, it's about a guy who's a barnstormer in the early 1900s. He comes back from World War I, and back then, because the planes became obsolete so fast, these biplanes, the Jennies in particular, you could buy for pretty cheap and then fly around the country. And so there was this whole kind of wave or phenomenon of barnstorming, where people would fly to a town where there probably wasn't even a lot of automobiles at that time, and they'd be like, I have a plane, here's 50 cents, I'll give you a ride over your town, your whole life to fly. And then they'd sleep under the wing of the plane, and the plane still had like linen wings that were resin, and it's beautiful. I love that moment. That moment in history to me has always been really interesting, because it's in between these two world wars. America it's kind of this calm before this big storm, and there's this burst of ingenuity over here, where you have an inventiveness, where you have electric lighting going everywhere, and roads being built everywhere, and everything from like the beginnings of the telephone and all the stuff that's like popping up everywhere, and life is changing so fast, and there's this hopefulness, and yet this kind of storm cloud on the horizon. And the story is about this guy, and he crashes into this property with thinking that it's like set up for him, that he doesn't know where he's lost, and he crashes into this property, and it's being set up for a wedding, and he ruins all of it. And then the next morning he's like trying to slink out of there after being like beaten up by the brothers, and the woman who was getting married is there, and it's like, take me with you, and I want to leave right now. And so it is a romance, but it's also an adventure story. He's like, I'm not taking you anywhere and whatever. She's like, take me or I'm yelling for my brothers. And so and it becomes this adventure where the two of them bond, and they do fall in love. So I guess it is a romance. Yeah, I guess it's a romance, but it's got like, her family's chasing them, and they're rich.
Sure.
It's got like killing and action and whatever, but yeah, it is. So I'm trying.
Kind of fun.
Yes, no monsters. There's that, and then there's a super sci-fi one. I like made the mistake of I probably told you all about it here and said who's on it and all that stuff. And now I'm trying to backpedal to do more of a official release, because Will, the editor on all the books, and a lot of my publishing partners, not the creators, but the people we're publishing through in different capacities, from Image to other places, are like, just wait.
Right. No, yeah, and I don't want to give anything away.
But one of them is like straight up science fiction noir in a world where like you can kind of skin the way you see things however you want, because of new tech. So not with glasses, it's like your eye, literally you can just sort of, the superstructure is still there, but you can like, if I
overlay it,
everything is like porn setting or manga setting or 1930s black and white setting, it's that. And and it's a murder mystery that takes place in this world. And so it's really fun for an artist, obviously, is like a visual buffet. So just to give you a sense of the scope, there's like the historical stuff over here. There's the sci-fi stuff over here. There's horror, straight up horror. I've been teasing with Francesco for a while, Francavilla. That story is part of this. So there's a lot of range. I hope, that's the goal, is to be the most exciting writer to myself at this point. I really deeply disagree with that quote that went around from somebody. I don't even know if they were in comics, but it was about like how, your competition is other creators and other writers, and you have to remember that. And your competition is yourself. Like, obviously there's only so many jobs and those things if you're working for licensed stuff or whatever, but I don't know, if you're doing your job right, I feel like you're not in competition with other writers because your style is your own. You're saying something uniquely yours. Your approach is yours. That was always my like, my love of teaching came from that. Even when Capullo would tease me and be like, "You're training your replacement." I'm like, not if I'm doing my job, because I'm training them to be them, do their voice, and that means there's a total bifurcation, or there's a way in which they're nothing like me then.
Yeah.
So with this, that's the goal here, is to be able to show you Best Jacket and be like, wow, they're doing so many different things, all kinds of projects. And not to keep talking and forever, but one of the other things we're really interested in is I've thought a lot this year about just, who I want to be in comics and what's important to me doing Best Jacket. And some of it is just, about the books, and some of it is about trying new things creatively. And then some of it has also been, a commitment I tried to set up when I was at DC, and also promoting the next wave of creators. And so I'm working on one element right now that hopefully we'll be able to announce, if it all goes through okay, in the summer as well, with the other stuff that will be about showcasing or helping support new talent with miniseries and that stuff alongside stuff I'm doing. So, all of it. I want it to show a range all across, creatively, in terms of the investment in the community, so that some books might be digital, some books might be digital first, some books might be print, some books might be just trade, some books might be, self-published, all of it, where it's like everything is part of a robust sense of commitment to comics as a whole, as comics as a full industry.
Right. And it's important, I think, because in this day and age, everybody always talks about diversification. You gotta diversify if you want to succeed. And it looks like this is an endeavor that allows you to have to appeal to every Scott Snyder fan out there / reach the widest possible audience. Because in this case, it's like, if you're a big Scott Snyder fan, you're going to just follow every Best Jacket press book, right? You just, boom, everything that comes out, I get it. But then there's also the opportunity, because of the diversity of genre, the diversity of creator, and the diversity of media, because you're hitting both digital and physical, to reach a potential audience that you've never been able to penetrate before. Yeah. To have people go like, "I love this book," and go, "Did you know that that's the guy who did this?" And it's like, "Oh shit, I didn't know that." Like, I have no, like, and the kind of power of that is, you can't understate it, because there are so many prolific creators, yourself included, whose work is out there that you can touch upon it, and you don't necessarily know between the two works that it's the same guy or gal.
Yeah. Well, that's, the goal eventually is to be able to branch out into other genres all across, other medium. I'm fascinated by this moment in comics also, even 5 years ago, it was so different. Like, yeah. And, being really plugged into DC for so long, watching the seismic and tectonic changes that are happening in the superhero world, from everything from like Marvel's distribution deal with Random House to, the sort of corporate upending of the structure at DC last year. Yeah. You see all of these kind of moves towards, some things that are really exciting and some things that are scary, but exciting too. But there's a sense of purpose at both companies, I think, right now, of Marvel and DC, about having a plurality of storytelling mechanisms in the right places. Whereas I think for the last, at least I'll speak to DC, like for the last number of years, there was confusion, I think, about what to do with digital or how to how to make sure that the direct market products were very much direct market and for the direct market in a way that took the right kinds of risks, pushed things forward progressively in terms of story and character and all of that, and yet at the same time had, you know, real comfort food and red meat for longtime fans in different ways.
Yeah.
They're very committed to that now with the new structure with Daniel Cherry and with Marie Javins and that. And that's exciting to me, that it feels like they're looking at the different modes of storytelling and distribution in a way that's really trying to determine what organically fits best where to make one big synergistic kind of organism. And that, as corporate as that sounds, that's a good approach because it allows digital to be like a testing ground for new characters, new talent, where there's lower risk because it's less investment,
less overhead. Yeah.
Less overhead. And then if something's successful, it gives retailers something that they already has a proven track record and has some buzz. So
exactly,
all of that stuff is happening, you know, and that's just superhero. I mean, the idea that I really believe, and Tyner and I were joking about this just the other day, like the world is kind of going through what a bunch of us comic geeks have gone through a couple times in superhero world of like boom and then burnout, where it's like in the 80s, all of this excitement around deconstructing superheroes that you saw with Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and everything. And then kind of a re-energizing of superheroes after an Image, you know, and create your own, and then re-energizing of superheroes for a while in the 2000s. And then again, it kind of deconstructed The Boys and all this stuff coming out, and, you know, with the big image boom that Witches was a part of in 2010, 11, that. And then a big resurgence of superheroes. And, you know, and then right now the cycle feels like we've just had so much saturation of superheroes because of the whole Marvel cycle, Zack Snyder stuff, everything, that now you see companies going smartly into smaller, like Winter Soldier, like WandaVision, like Mandalorian, even for Star Wars. Like they're digging into the properties in really targeted ways. And so the thing I'm trying to get at with this is that it feels like one of those moments when there's intense interest from viewers, from readers, in things that are more intimately their own, that aren't giant corporate tents, because those things happened and were amazing, you know. Marvel stuff is amazing now, and Star Wars, huge. Now it's time people are hungry the way we were and I think that's why in the 90s and stuff for creator owned, or things that are more ours and less corporate brand. And that's why I think The Boys and Watchmen and those things are suddenly finding crazy success on television, you know, and so it drives people to creator owned right now in a way that I think is showing with, you know, book after book, you know, hitting. I didn't think that we'd hit 150,000+ with Nocterra, or that Tynan, you know, all these books would hit 100,000+. But you see it happening, and you see this wave of interest and the rising of companies like Vault and Bad Idea and all that. It's exciting, and it's totally scary. It's everyone's scared shitless, like nobody knows. But I just try and point to the things that are also inspiring and sort of fascinating. And I love that this moment is so volatile, but ripe with possibility also in so many ways for us to get it right as we go forward, creating something as an industry that really addresses some systemic issues and, you know, at the same time kind of embraces what we could be going forward, even though that requires some difficult change. So I'm all about Best Jacket kind of mirroring that in different ways by at least being experimental, by being progressive in terms of some of our choices, and being invested, you know, in comics in that way too. So I don't have any like goals to like leave. I'm doing screenwriting stuff, but that's not my goal is never to leave and do that stuff.
Right. To use comics as a stepping stone to get into the next level.
Yeah, I mean, my agent always is mad at me because I turn that shit down a lot. Like I don't have a tremendous interest in it. Like I'm doing it with Charles for Undiscovered Country, and I'm doing Witches because they've hired Jock to do the art with to do the all the storyboards. Yeah, use his art as a template. So it's a good idea. Television. And because I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this, but I was able to get James Tynan into the writer's room with me for a couple of the episodes. So hopefully it'll come out. Who knows? Maybe it'll never come out, but I have a lot of faith in it. And I'll do the screenwriting stuff if it's with my friend and I get to do it.
Right, but you don't want to like move and get like the job and, you know, I'm working on this. So 24 is getting a revival. I'm coming in. Like,
no, you'll never see that. I love comics too much in terms of even for my own mental health. I mean, I don't like, I would like, I'll write a novel, you know, I like that. I used to do that. And
You did that, yeah.
I did. But it never was as enjoyable to me as comics because with both things, it's like the singularity and the isolation and all that stuff, like the collaborative aspect of comics and the give and take and the kind of constant fluidity of it, where you're making something that's always changing, you know, with someone else, and it comes out the way you want. And, you know, working in screenplay, like you might get paid a good amount, but you do it and then
it's over. Like you're gone.
Yeah, it's over, and they changed it a million times, and
exactly.
You don't have access to when it's being made, and it's not. I don't know. Making a comic, like me making Nocterra, Tony and I make it with Tomeo and Darren and Will, and then what we make comes out the way we want, and that's it. Like there's just purity in that and beauty in that, and I don't know. There's very few medium that are like that. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure it's the same for books, but books are not collaborative. You know, in that way is why I'm not enjoyed it as much as I enjoy comics. Making something together with other people, sharing the life of that thing, and then putting it out in the world the way you want. I can't think of a lot of other things that are like that without a huge corporate oversight. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a writer's room. It's not that. It's like us making it and knowing the image, or me with Best Jacket, however we do it, we'll be able to, you know, have it be for better or worse what we just want it to be.
Yeah. Hell, even in the like the big two corporate structure, it's still, from what I understand, I mean, I've never been there, but like from talking to people like you, it's like it is this kind of like fraternity or collaborative experience where it's like these these like clandestine Zoom meetings where it's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? It'll blow like this is going to turn some heads. And then you get the pages back and you see them and you get to go, oh, tweak this, or I love that, or, you know, this is going to blow their minds, and picking, you know, there is this kind of like beautiful kind of like all the kids around the table, like finger painting kind of experience that you just don't get. I think the only thing I can get equated to is like independent filmmaking. And even then it's like the expense and the, you know,
the distributor and the whole thing. And
exactly.
I mean, no, I really is it's a special thing. And even superheroes is like that too. I mean, there's a lot. I think one of the things that's really interesting to me now too is people say, well, how can you be doing all these books, create your own? Like when, you know, but what I realized when I started to go back to American Vampire a year plus ago with it before the pandemic was like, there's so much energy when you're doing superhero comics that's devoted to the different layers of calculation you have to do in there that I always enjoy, like every aspect of that. I mean, there's certainly moments I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna fucking murder somebody. But I mean, there's no part of it that I really disliked. But here, like, let me give you an example of like the levels. Like, you're doing, let's say, an event is a whole thing. I mean, an event is like a whole separate beast.
Mm-hmm.
But just doing Batman, right? When you're doing Batman, there's the level of, first and foremost, making something you love with this character that has all of this legacy. Yep. So there's a whole second, you know, it's not just like making something up. It's like, what villain am I using? How do I make this villain really my own and represent the things I want to say and talk about and explore and all that? So that takes more energy than I think at least it's a slower process than kind of being like, what am I making? You know what I mean? In my own mind. But then there's the layer of politics, like then internally. So it's like, how do I now get this approved? You know, then once it's approved, then it's like, well, how do I now think about the whole line as the Batman line? How do I give people pieces they can work with? So the whole politics, which is a lot of energy of like, how do I pitch this to my editor to my boss, all that stuff, and Then it goes down to the level of like fans, right? And one of the things is understanding where your character is in the trajectory of that character's perception, right? So like if I'm working on Batman, where was Batman before I took it with Grant and with, you know, Tony? How do I do something that definitely announces itself as what it is and is in conversation with those things? So it's like, well, if Grant's doing big, my story is always grounded, but Grant's doing really big world, mind-bending, meta world stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm going to start in a really grounded way and promote it that way and say, it's a compliment to what over there, but you have this different thing here. And then similarly, if you're doing something that you know is really going to upset people, you know, because you love it. But it's like metal. Metal was like upsetting to people when I did it, and Court of Owls was upsetting, you know, or in different ways because it had his brother. And
Yeah.
you're doing a calculation all the time, or at least I am in my head, of how to, like, I do talk to the fans in terms of not online with trolls or whatever, but I talk to them in terms of, I do try and acknowledge what I think as a fan myself their concerns are, to get them on board, to take them where I want them to go. So I'll be like, yes, Commissioner Gordon is the stupidest idea ever as Batman, and he will say that line in the book. So that then you say, oh, I get it. Scott kind of understands that I think this is dumb. Maybe I'll give it 2 more pages. And then I'll try and make those the best pages ever to like drag you in, you know, that I've done. So it's that calculation anyway, not to go down too deep a rabbit hole. So that's just like 5 levels of like things that you have to devote energy to. Whereas when you're doing your own stuff, it's kind of like, let's make it. You know what I mean? And like,
like, and who knows? Like, you know, no bad ideas. What do you got? And it's like, whoa, like, no, there's nothing like that kind of energy.
So much faster. It's so much faster where I'm like, you know, just suddenly like, it's like driving on a super highway as opposed to the back roads where it's like, yeah, I could do an issue in a day and then look at it the next day and be like, I love this, or I hate this, or I'm going to change it, whatever. But it's pure, you know, and I really enjoy it a lot. Between American Vampire, my own stuff, all of it, Undiscovered Country, like I'm not regretful that I didn't do it earlier. Like, I'm so glad to have had all the time that I've had at DC, and I'm glad to go back and do more stuff and eventually hopefully do stuff at Marvel too. But the fun is having this time suddenly and just being able to move anywhere is just, it's so weirdly freeing. It's just so weirdly liberating where it's like, I could write this today and there's no math to do in my head about what editor might object to that, or what would surprise fans in terms of an Easter egg that will show that, you know, there's just none of that. It's just,
God, I can't even imagine the algebra that goes into just the element that you just described of, oh no, I made like a reference for me, and it became this speculation that is overwhelming the narrative. So now people are, you know, like the Mephisto WandaVision thing, where it's like everyone was talking about X-Men instead of the show, and it's like,
all the time.
I'm sure that was like really frustrating for the people involved, because they're like, we're just trying to tell a story about like a robot and a chicken loving with each other, but like, I guess we could talk about X-Men.
Totally. And imagine on an event, I mean, it's a whole, there's 3 more levels of like tie-ins and corporate. I mean, because at least 1 quarter, sometimes 2Q, they call it like Q1, Q2, or Q3, Q4, whatever. Budget depends on the success of that thing. And so there's like a whole secondary mechanism of like set of machines that go off that you have to do. And look, again, I love it, and I'm glad. I hope to do it again someday in different ways. But being away from it, it's just giving me such a different perspective on how much, you know, how many levels of work you have to do when you're doing superhero stuff. And when I teach it again, if I teach, you know, superhero storytelling, I want to bring a lot of that in and be like, you don't have to listen to me about any of it, because the truth is, like, you can do it and not give a shit about any of that. Like, you can be like, I don't care how the character is perceived, or where they are in their trajectory. I'm just doing my thing, putting it out. I want no social media. I want none. God bless you. Like, you should totally do that if that's how you feel comfortable, and I support that. But I would just say, these are all things I would bring to somebody's attention, because they're all tools and ways of trying to tell the story you want to tell, not compromising, not changing, but understanding constantly how to position that story in a way that will give it a better chance of being successful. Doesn't mean changing anything in the story itself necessarily at all. It just means being aware of the context in which that story is coming out, so that you can always kind of pivot and understand how to handle barriers or obstacles to it, you know, in that way. That's all. So I don't know. It's very, there's not a corner of comics that doesn't interest me some way or another.
Yeah. No, that's refreshing, because it is, I find it such a fascinating industry, and I think because it's like so insulated and you know, like, it's small, I guess, in comparison to like other, you know, brackets of industries, but it's also just like, it's an interesting and like complicated beast that's like always fun to study, because it's always metamorphosizing. It's always becoming something else.
I can't tell you, like, I was just talking with Josh Williamson yesterday about like Rebirth was only less than 5 years ago. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The whole
The whole line's different. Like,
the
it's
whole
just,
line, you can't. It's like whole generations of creators have changed their whole everything. Like whole careers have come and changed and gone this way or that way and whatever. Like,
yeah.
so looking back on the, I guess, like 11 years plus that I've been in the business now at this point, or at DC that long, all of the changes, and it just seems like this period in particular, these last few years, is moving so much faster. Like the changes are just like, there were a lot of changes always, but they were within a context of a kind of stability.
Yeah.
And now it's almost like that's fallen away, and instead it's like this acceleration of like changes that you thought might come in different ways, and they're all happening at once. And it's super scary. And I totally understand, like, a lot of hardship coming from everywhere. But I do think there's also really interesting opportunities for creative risks and sort of explosions in places that you wouldn't expect. And also commercial ones, like success in places you wouldn't expect too, if we do things right. So I don't know, I'm excited about a lot of it as much as I am.
It's funny. It reminds me of your son's existential dread of being like, you mean everything could fall apart at once? Like, I didn't realize. I thought there was some kind of structure, and it's like, yeah, no, the comic book industry thought that too. Like,
no,
everybody was like,
I'd say, like, the one thing I'd say honestly is a button on all of that, meandering kind of talking with you, because I could talk to you forever about like one thing, like
right.
My friends, and like I feel like I could be like distribution this, or the Green Lantern line this, or Marvel King and Blood, whatever.
That excites me. Like, that's like, no, yeah, let's do that. Like, you just, I'm like, oh,
what are we gonna do with Diamonds? Any of it, like, or the new Image books, the Image Boom, Geiger, all the whatever, like everything. Like, I'm every day I have to stop myself from like, I have to just be like work.
Right.
The thing I'd say is the key right now in my really, James was we were talking about this the other day too. Like, I talk to Tynan like every day, so that's why he's coming up. He's and it's weird to think how long we've been friends. Like, he was my student when he was in college, and I was like a 20-something adjunct teacher. Like, they hired me. They were like, I guess we need someone to teach these comic things. I'm like,
right.
I hadn't even like broken in yet, and so we've been friends like 15 years essentially. Before, I don't even know if I was married back then and whatever. But the whole, but we were joking the other day, and we were talking. He's like, the two of us have spent so much time over the years understanding the math of the industry, or trying to understand the math, so that you can always be aware of what you're doing. For example, like, okay, well, where are indie books right now? Is this a bad time to release this book that I love, but is just not gonna, should I wait on it about 6 months because there's so many books right now like this book? Or superhero wise, you know what, like, with all this stuff going on, all the movies, all this, maybe we go quiet for a bit, and then, whatever, like all that math, just constantly talking it, is it the right time to do metal? Okay, well, this is, I don't care if it is or not, I'm doing it, and this is how we're gonna, or no, death metal needs to be way different than that because of this, and Marvel's over here doing Secret Empire, we don't want to do that. Like, everything is like that for us. And then the other day we're talking, and I'm talking to him about, like, when I come back to DC and I'm doing XYZ, like, and he's like, Scott, there's no math anymore. Like, math, there's like the only math, like, he's like, you're trying to, he's like, all those like, all those like equations on the board, they're all broken. Like, no one knows anymore. It's not what's going to happen over here in this way. Oh, it's sure. Or this is happening, or this creator's going here. It's like, it's just all in flux. And he was like, and it's true. The only thing you can count on if you're a creator, I really believe, is sincerity at this moment. Like, don't try to play the math. And when I say playing the math the way we were, it was an honest, transparent math. It's like understanding the context of what's happening in the industry, not so that you can take advantage of it or exploit it, but that you understand what pitfalls to avoid as you're going forward with things you love. Like, maybe I shouldn't try and bring back Stephanie Brown or Cass Kane right now because the person in charge of blah, blah, blah is going to resist that, and we won't get a second chance. But if we wait 6 months until they're supposed to move over to this department, maybe we can do it then. Like, all of that math. Yeah. And then now it's like, he's like, that math is just not there. Both internally at DC, it's more creators are empowered different. I mean, editors have a different position, I think.
Yeah.
And outside in the world, like the way that the indie stuff is going, there's no sure things anymore. It's like a book you think could do great at Image could bomb. A book that you think wouldn't suddenly is taking off because it found its own readership in an exciting way that they reached out on an intimate level. And the thing again is like sincerity. Like, don't bullshit consumers about what it is you're trying to sell or what it is you're trying to do. What you are, if you don't like the thing, don't sell it like that.
Yeah.
It's right now is like, you live or die on the hill of like your own earnestness about what it is you're doing. Just tell them what it is and try and get them excited. Don't, you know what I mean? Don't chase anything right now because it's just it's so volatile. There's no gaming it, is what I'm saying. The way I think if someone was trying to a while ago, you could be like, I see the trend of this, or fans really seem to want this. I'm going to jump on that boat. Like, we never did that. And it was always the opposite of that. But it was, there was always, you always saw examples of that, or you knew what was going on now and then with some things like that. Now it's more like, it's too paper thin, all of it. It's hollow. You can't step on the ice will break. You just can't.
Yeah.
So just make the thing you love. It's the most basic rule. It's like the first thing my first great teacher told me, writing wise, when I was in like high school. She was just like, you have to write the story that you would love to pick up today and find. It doesn't have to be the smartest. It can be anything, political, memoir, action, adventure, but it has to be the one that you'd be most inspired to find that day. And that's it, and that feels like the only compass in this crazy ocean that's happening now in comics as a creator is like, make the shit that you would love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're certainly doing that, man. I'm excited to see what else is coming out the pipe for you. I think that's a good transition. I think we can probably wrap up here. Otherwise, it's going to be another hour, and I don't want to take up more of your time.
No, yeah, I would. I believe me, I'd happily do it. But I'm on my last. I'm polishing the last issue of American Vampire, and it's like breaking my heart.
God, yeah. Well, you don't want to, because you want to get that right, because that's
I'm gonna bring it back again with Rafa in different form later on in different ways when we have another creator-owned thing that we're gonna do at some point in the next, really right after this, but we're gonna come back to American Vampire. The issue is we need to finish this series, this version of it, so that we can kind of come back and do early adventures of Skinner Swede, and we can do things that are about the present day instead of it being this march towards the present. So it'll be more sporadic, but it will live on. It's just finishing this cycle is like getting the 2 omnibuses done.
Right. I just have to ask, what's the page on your wall behind you?
Oh, that's it's Todd McFarlane. It's Spider-Man 319. See?
Oh my God. Well, I know that page. Yeah.
So it's actually it's funny. It's like and that's Jeff Lemire. That's from when we did After Death. He gave me
After Death.
Yeah. If you want to see more funny, like that's my parents bought me that owl thing when I started Court of Owls. They were like, "Here's just to keep you, in the right spirit."
That looks like the owl thing for the statue in the basement in the library.
Exactly. Yeah, they got it for me back then. And then the page. I was 13, and I went to a comic convention with my father, and I had like $200 saved up, and Todd McFarlane's line was like 3 hours long. We waited in it, and I was like, it was my birthday, and my dad was like, it's his 13th birthday today, and Todd was like, how much you got? And he gave me that page, which was easily like double the price, at least, of what I had at that time, probably 10 times, who knows. And he was like, here you go, and he drew on the back a Spider-Man head, and with webbing wrote "Happy Birthday, Scott." In the thing, so that's on the back of that page. And I told him, I'm like, I'm never going to sell this page ever in my life, Mr. McFarlane. I'm going to have this page forever. And it made me feel like comics was this welcoming thing. And then the first time I met him again, when I was just starting Batman, we were on the Howard Stern like Geek Time together.
Uh-huh.
And I saw him, and I like brought the page because I knew he was going to do that. And I was like, Mr. McFarlane, like, I'm Scott, I'm on Batman with your friend Greg Capullo, and guess what? Like, you gave me this page when I was 13, and he's like, I gave you that page for $40, And I'm like, I was like, can't get that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was really funny. He was kidding, but Yeah, so no, I've kept, it was the first page I ever bought, so that's why it's on my wall. I have one by, Capullo, in the other thing over there with the cover of number 3, and Sean Murphy. I have stuff with everyone. I have a couple from Jock and Jeff and Rafa and everybody. So.
Yeah. No, I was like, okay, what is it? It's in the frame. It's you gotta ask.
Yeah. I have one I'll show you next time from Jim Lee. That's I have a couple. I have 2 from Jim Lee that he was kind enough to just give me from our Superman run. But one of them he gave my wife, which was awesome. Where he drew her in as a doctor, because she's a doctor, but she was a resident at the time because it was 10 years ago almost now, and she's talking to Lois Lane on the phone because Lois is like calling the hospital to check on a patient, and my wife is the doctor. She's like,
Aww.
And she's like, well, Miss Lane, da da da, and it's my wife. It's in our bedroom. She loves it. It's like she's in her white coat, the whole thing. Yeah, Jim was very sweet about that. So
is that Unchained?
Yeah, it's on Unchained. Yeah, it's issue. I think it's like issue 2 from that. But he gave me this. I mean, I'll show it. It's in the other house. I'm in my studio, so my studio. That's the only piece of art I have in here because there's not a lot of space on the walls. It's all windows basically. You can see, but it's like.
Nice
windows and whatever. So that's over there. But he gave me this splash of Superman walking through the base that Wraith is in, with Wraith behind him, and all of the amazing military gear behind him as Superman like walks. It's just the most beautiful splash ever.
That's awesome.
So yeah, he was so kind. He just kept sending stuff, man. He was really nice the whole way through.
Well, there we go. We could geek out before we wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Scott, thank you so much as always for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to your comic book store, Nocterra 2, it's out. Grab number 1.
I forgot Death Metal. The deluxe edition, the hardcover came out, which they did a great job with. And then next week's American Vampire. So excited about that too.
So plenty to pick up and plenty more coming out. We'll see you guys next time, and stay tuned for back issue. So long, everybody.